Hey, this is Troy Erickson from copywriting.org. And today I'm talking with one of my students who had a really successful promo, but he didn't just do it once, he did it twice and even three times with different clients. So we wanted to get on and talk a little bit about how he sold $40,000 in 72 hours to a list of less than 1,000 people. I think that's really, really impressive. So I brought on Aaron Elias to talk about how he did it.
Good to be here, Troy.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, and first of all, I guess, like, how did you get into the whole like email and copywriting world?
Uh, it's quite a story, but I'm going to try and make it short. A couple years ago, I was dealing with some pretty severe health issues, and I was sort of stuck in the 9 to 5 grind, and it was just proving to be too much for me. So one day I realized coming home, it was like 5:30, and I had an hour commute each way. And I was just like, I can't keep doing this. Like, I'm never going to get to where I want to be in life if I have to spend 8 hours, 9 hours in an office. So I started looking up alternatives. First, I was leaning towards entrepreneurship, went through some of Russell Brunson's stuff. And then I was going through all the top posts on the entrepreneur subreddit on Reddit. And I came across this post that just sort of stepped out what sales copywriting was and, what you can do with it. And from there on, it was just a straight shot. Like, I've been a writer since I was 15 years old. So it seemed like a good shot for me.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's like, the industry really does like change people and allows you like all these crazy opportunities. So I'm glad you found it because stories like that are actually surprisingly common where it's like you have no idea that this industry really even exists. And they're like, wait a minute, I love writing, so might as well do it. But that's awesome, man. Happy for you.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I guess let's talk a little bit more about this launch. 40K, 72 hours, less than 1,000 people. Can you give a little background into, the client and kind of like what happened before the promo and why you decided to run with this promo?
Yeah. So the client was a dating company sort of transitioning to personal development. The promo was sort of a combination between coaching and an info product. So what we had done beforehand was we spent a couple of days hyping it up, telling them what was coming. And we then, started pushing an early bird list. Can't remember for how long exactly we did it. We did that for a couple of days as well. And we offered them an incentive to join. And then we just hit it hard with the emotional touch points. This is a very easy, at least, for me, a very easy niche to, people have a lot of pain, if they're not living their full lives, if they're not who they want to be. We touch on that very strongly. And then at the end of it, we just push urgency very hard.
Yeah, that's a good point too. A lot of people forget about early bird lists. So were you getting people to reply or like what was the action that they had to take to get on the early bird list?
I think we were utilizing some reply emails. I think for one of them, it might have just been, book it early on. But for some of them, we were using like, what was your number one obstacle or blocking point or something like that.
Yeah. And even like last year, I launched my certification program and like I've done this ever since. Anytime I launch something is like, hey, I'm launching this thing and really hype it up over the couple days before. And if it's like a big project, I'll send one email about it like a month in advance. But yeah, just really being able to hype people up because it matters. Like, sure, you're not selling anything in that specific email, maybe, but the fact that people are thinking about it helps you make the sales 2, 3, 4 days later, a week later, whatever it is. So for anybody listening, like 100% do an early bird list or an early bird email or something and give people a way to say like, hey, I'm in on this. Now, you mentioned that you basically, you had like one reply email perhaps, and then you also had another email where they could like get a discount, for example. So did you have different tiers where it's like at the beginning, it was just early bird email, and then it was like a certain price point, and then after that to the public, it was a higher price point, or how did the pricing work?
Yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we had, I can't remember the specifics, but there were different tiers to it. It was like joined by this date, and you get into like the first tier, which is obviously the best one. Then you join by the next one, and you still get the next tier, and so on and so forth. And then once the early bird was closed, we still had separate tiers for the promo as well. We had like bronze, gold, diamond, or platinum, something like that as well.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, did you run these tiers by like once we hit this day at midnight, then that tier is over, or was it based on the number of people who joined and like when it was full, then it moved on to the next tier?
We kind of used a bit of both. I think in practice, we went by time, but we also said, like we have so many spots for this tier, we can only allow those many people in. But if they're not all filled up by such and such a date, then we're going to shut it off and go to the next one.
Yeah, so that's a good point too. Just being like, all right, it's either this or this. And if like we fill up with 50 or 100 people, then we're going to move on. Or if this date hits, then we're going to move on. So when the actual launch started, so all the early bird and the tiers are kind of out of the way, what are some of the email angles that you use when you're doing a promo? Is it like, hey, the thing is here, and then maybe like a social proof email, an FAQ, or is there a specific order of emails that you send out?
It was a couple of years ago, so it's hard to remember the order, but I do know that what we did a lot was largely touch on pain, just because this is a very pain-heavy industry or niche to be in. We also use some social proof, but a lot of the proof comes from the coaches themselves, because their backstories are just like so either similar to the target audience, or they're like very like not rags to riches, but like a very strong example of like worst case scenario to best case scenario.
Yeah, it's showing how people actually walk the walk inside the program. And that's a good point as well, because especially if you have a coaching program and you can give examples from the coaches who are actually going to be talking to your customers, then the customers are like, wow, I really love that person's story. And then they're like, wait a minute, I can actually talk to that person and get help from that person. So it's really good to like highlight, people internally and show that you walk the walk. So that's cool. Now, is there anything that you do like after the launch and say like, hey, maybe you missed out on this one, it might reopen in the future? Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, I do know a couple times we would delay the deadline, which I know for some people is a bit iffy. That was not my decision, but I guess in this case it did work. There did seem to be quite a bit of demand for it, so I think in this case it did make sense. But we generally, once the promo ends, we don't really insinuate that there's going to be another opportunity. There may be somewhere down the line, but once it's over, we say it's over.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. One thing that worked really well for a client that I had before was when the launch ended, or like when the sale ended, or whenever the promotional period ends. We actually had a handful of people that emailed us, and they were like, it was the weekend, I was hanging out with my grandkids, and the product was themed for grandkids. So they're like, hey, I was hanging out with my grandkids, I missed the sale, is there anything you can do for me? And then we reopened it by literally using their words and be like, hey, we know a couple people missed it because they're hanging out with grandkids, and then we like reopened it. But I think that could be a really killer angle as well. But last thing that I want to mention here too is, you've done this multiple times, right? So there's one campaign that did 30K in 48 hours and then 24K in 36 hours to the same list. And obviously, same business. So what are you doing the second and third time that still allows it to be successful, even if somebody has already seen the offer before? Are you like tweaking the offer or the emails, or how does that work?
I think it's a couple different things. First off, obviously, is deliverability. The list was very fine-tuned. It was very well maintained, so we were getting very good results even on the daily emails. The offers were slightly different each time. Sometimes they were different coaches, but generally, I mean, they all sort of they all sort of promised the same end result. It was just a different pathway to get there. And I guess the third part of it is just really being able to understand the target audience is, their heaven and hell, their pain points, where they're coming from. Because I mean, these are people who think that, they're afraid that they're never gonna, have the life that they want, that they're going to be stuck this way forever. And when you're dealing with something like, personal development, it's such a subjective, hard to define, ethereal topic, like, to the point that people think it's a scam. So you have to find a way to really connect with them and show them that you're not just, some quote unquote guru selling them snake oil, that what you do works and you're going to help get them there.
Yeah, that's true too. How do you really show testimonials when an audience is like skeptical immediately? Is it just like screenshots from a coaching program? Is it somebody who like messages you or messages the guru and says like, here's how my life changed? Is it like a study, or like what's the best way to show social proof in that niche?
In this case, again, we largely relied on the coaches themselves, but we did use testimonials from students as well. Thinking back, we used a lot. In most cases, it was like messages saying, hey, you rock. I've been doing this and this and this, and this is how it's affected my life. Sometimes we've had case studies, with particularly exemplary students who got really good results. And, now they're actually like living the life that they want to be living, whether that's running a business or they have a big social circle or they, found the love of their life. And sometimes they'll have photos showing that, or, screenshots of their business, something like that. But in most cases, it would be, screenshots of conversations or photos of the life that they're currently living.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Is there anything else in regard to promos or emails or sales that you want to share as like a closing tip?
I would just say, really get to know your audience. In most cases, I mean, I probably don't need to say it, but in most cases, these are people who are, really hurting on the inside, especially in the industry that I was writing for. So if you can show them that where they're coming from and that what you have is the real deal, and also, I don't think I mentioned it, but we also gave them some pretty decent guarantees as well. If this doesn't help you, then we're gonna, make it right for you. So you don't need to, there's like no risk, or there's low risk for you coming into this. So you just make it a no-brainer deal, make it, make them see that they'd have to be an idiot to say no to what you're offering them, and they'll be happy to take you up on it.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that too, because a lot of people forget, especially if they come from a corporate background, that when you write an email, it's not just like, hey, big sale today, like go buy this thing. You're talking to a real person on the other end, and they have like real emotions, and they can actually be hurt, and they can, feel a certain way. And just to feel understood and just to know that they're not alone, like it means the world to people. And when you're sending emails about that, and other companies are sending emails about like promos and, people feel like a dollar sign, but when you write an email and they don't feel like a dollar sign, it just makes a world of difference. Even if something's for sale, it's just, they know that you care. So, Aaron, thanks for coming on here and sharing all this stuff. And if somebody wants to contact you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can get to me at my email. It's my full name, Aaron Elias, then 725 @gmail.com.
Okay, cool. So that is on copywriting.org, and we'll put it in the description below as well. So if you need any help with running sales promos or launches or anything like that, contact Aaron in the description below. And once again, thanks for being on here, Aaron, and thanks to everybody for watching.